Well, good morning and welcome to our morning briefing. I'm Jeff Catula, President of the Washington County Chamber of Commerce. And before we start this morning, I'd like to thank our sponsors, Range Resources, Washington Health System, Monongahela Valley Hospital, and Shell Directories. Thank you so much for being with us and supporting our efforts on morning briefing. I'd also like to thank our continuing sponsor of this series, Community Bank, for all their support as we've brought these series to you over the past several weeks. It's my pleasure this morning to introduce Jonathan Hart, who's the Director of Government Affairs for Crown Castle. Jonathan, good morning to you.
Good morning, Jeff.
Thank you very much for being with us. And before we start, how have you been holding up during this COVID emergency?
Yeah, I'm doing well, thank you very much. Blessed to work for a great company like Crown Castle, and been working from home for the last 10 weeks now. So doing well, family's keeping well. I thought I was getting close to being an empty nester, but I've got two of my adult sons back at home now, so the house seems a lot smaller.
Well, that's wonderful to hear. Please give them our best regards for continued good health, and we'll be out of this sooner than we hopefully think.
Thank you.
Jonathan, Crown Castle's been a big member of the Washington County Chamber of Commerce. You've been a great supporter of ours, but I think a lot of people in the region maybe aren't aware of the size of the company and what you do. Would you mind just starting giving us a little bit of background about Crown Castle, your efforts both locally and nationally?
Sure, I'd love to do that. Thanks, Jeff. But before I start, I'd like to say a big thanks to the Washington County Chamber of Commerce. I know we've really benefited from being a member of the chamber, and we love the partnership that we have. I'd also like to say thanks to all of the first responders and to the medical and healthcare communities and to the volunteers out there that are doing tremendous work during this time. So let me talk a little bit about Crown Castle, who we are. For those of the membership that don't know who we are, we're actually the US's largest shared communications infrastructure business, operating across all 50 states. Predominantly, we're just a US-based company. We have some assets in Canada, but we are the largest shared wireless infrastructure business in the US. That constitutes 40,000 towers, 70,000 small cells, either in contract or already built, and over 80,000 miles of fiber. In Southwest Pennsylvania alone, we have over 500 cell towers, 200 small cells, and over 2,200 miles of fiber. So these assets basically combine together to provide a national network of infrastructure that, in essence, enables our mobile devices to work seamlessly. So when we turn our phone on or we use a Zoom call, it's our network that basically helps to make these things work. Our business is founded on what we call co-location, which is a shared infrastructure model. So we put up a tower and we want as many customers on there as we can. So rather than having carriers build their own towers and be a proliferation of assets or towers across the country, we build a tower and then we lease space on that tower to our customers. So we like to build our assets in what we call hidden in plain sight. Mm-hmm. And we have I'm proud to say that we've got our roots firmly established in southwestern Pennsylvania. Although I'm English and I've been in Southwest PA for the last 13 years working for Crown. And we have our largest single office in South Point, just outside Canonsburg.
So what you're saying, please.
Let's say that again, sorry, Jeff.
I was saying, so what you're saying is that as you build towers, you have several providers using the same tower.
Exactly. That's correct. So we have the full big networks of AT&T, Verizon, T-Mobile and Sprint, and obviously recently there's been a merger between T-Mobile and Sprint, but all of those are significant customers of ours.
Now, can you tell us a little bit about your national portfolio? We know of the strong presence you have here in southwestern Pennsylvania. What's your national portfolio look like?
Yeah, we have as I said, we have over 40,000 towers nationwide. So we operate in every single state and every single city, and we're providing the backbone of mobile communications infrastructure. Not only do we have towers, but as the technology has evolved, small cells that are kind of like small radios that fit on utility poles, they've been used to help densify communications networks. So they're basically being built out not just to provide coverage alone, but to add capacity to networks. So as data has expanded, we're not only are we using phones for phone calls, we're using them for video, we're using them to stream movies, we're using them to take photographs and upload and send. So all these things require a tremendous amount of infrastructure, so that when we take it for granted that our phone's going to work, behind the scenes is all the infrastructure that makes it work. And that's owned and operated by Crown Castle.
Okay. I want to turn your focus for a minute to kind of the situation we all are experiencing now, working and educating remotely. It's become really a new way of life for us. Can you talk a little bit about the communication infrastructure that allows us to do that, and what the components are of it?
Sure. Yeah, I'd love to. So as your members all know, we've become so dependent upon wireless connectivity to both work and to learn, whether it be and to live, whether it be shopping online or for entertainment, or just to stay connected to our friends and families during these challenging times. We've all become reliant upon connectivity. So now more than ever, our communications infrastructure has become an essential part of our lives. And you could call it, I guess, kind of like water, gas, and electricity. You turn your light switch on, you don't necessarily know how it works, but you expect it to work. So our infrastructure, and with wireless communications, we've become the fourth utility. So you asked a question about how it does work. When we use a phone or we use a portable or mobile device, usually only the first leg of that is actually wireless. So it might be when I make a phone call with my cell phone, that cell phone connects to the nearest tower or small cell. And from that tower or small cell, most of the call is actually transferred over fiber optic cable to the network and then transferred to the other user. And that's basically how the wireless infrastructure works.
Okay. And we talked a little bit, as you just mentioned, about the infrastructure of the system. With more and more people working and educating from home, I'm sure there's a capacity component to that as well. Could you talk to our members a little bit about the local and national capacity aspects of Crown Castle and your system?
Yeah, I'd love to. I mean, I think, when we talk about, I know you mentioned in your previous question about learning as well. So as with all applications, our connectivity has to be, it's become a critical component. So, if we're learning remotely, like my daughter's a high school senior, she's got a device now where she works, where she learns from home, and that device has to be connected to the network. And it's become, essential that both quality, speed, and reliability that connectivity, it is there. With, as you say, the demand on the networks has become much greater over time. It's become significantly greater during the COVID-19 outbreak. We've seen some reports that suggest that internet traffic has increased between 20 to 25% just in this 2-month period. So networks are being, like I say, we expect that reliability. Networks the demands on the networks have been much greater as applications have changed, as people have been kind of using video calls to do business, to connect with friends. The networks have really, truly had a significant increase in usage. So what are we doing to actually increase the capacity and help our customers ensure that their reliability maintains great? During this time, we continue to build. We haven't had any disruptions to what we're doing in terms of building infrastructure for our customers. We've been able to continue to work with municipalities in getting building permits, albeit somewhat, some municipalities are definitely challenged in that respect, but we continue to work with them in a sensitive way to make sure that we are continuing to build.
Have you noticed any stress on the system in terms of more and more usage?
No, I wouldn't say that we've actually noticed any specific stress on the network. I mean, certainly in terms of kind of providing healthcare solutions, we've built, added capacity and increased throughput through our fiber optic cable network as well. So we're doing our best to make sure that we are responding to the needs of increased demand at this time.
Okay, thank you. Because we really, to be honest with you, even doing these webinars, have not noticed any disruption or anything in the system. So I think it's functioning very, very well for all of us, and it's really now a good time to see what the stress levels are. Those, and they've been, in our opinion, performing very, very well.
Yeah, it's funny that you say that. I mean, I know in my household alone, I've gone from 3 people in the house to having my older sons back in, and we're all kind of fighting for bandwidth in the house, right? So many of us have gone to using just our mobile devices as hotspots rather than just relying on home Wi-Fi, and that seems to be helping us out tremendously as well. But if you think about the applications that we're all using, it's not just sort of email that we're working from home or video conferences. I've got my daughter that's watching TikTok videos on her phone, or my son playing his PlayStation wirelessly. All these things are very bandwidth hungry applications, and yet it's been surprising to see, certainly on the cellular networks where our infrastructure is so critical, how well the applications have continued to run and operate.
Before we get to our next question, Jonathan, I do want to remind our participants this morning that we'll be accepting questions for our guest, Jonathan Hart, this morning. So feel free to ask your questions by clicking the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen, and we'll get through as many as we can. Jonathan, I want to go back to a point that you just mentioned concerning hotspots, bandwidth, things of that nature. Washington County is still about a half rural county. When we think of Washington County, a lot of us think of the South Points and City of Washington, Canonsburg, and those areas. But Washington County is still approximately half rural. And during this time, we have a lot of school districts and businesses that are in those rural areas that may be having some difficulties with their internet and connectivity services. Is there anything that could be done right now to assist them, or do you see anything in the future that we should be working and building on to help them gain access and additional connectivity?
Sure, that's a great question. I mean, every industry is reliant on connectivity, as I've said, and it doesn't really matter what zip code you live or work in, whether it's urban or rural, you need that connectivity. And so we've stayed extremely focused on our customers and our community as well as our employees, and we're continuing to build out the essential infrastructure that's needed to keep up with that demand. So in rural areas, I know we've worked with state representatives across the entire state, and Washington County's got its more populated areas. I would say sort of Peters Township, and then you've got some more rural areas as well. So our assets covering the entire Washington County community, and in addition to that, we've also working with state and federal government. And federal government at the moment, improving rural broadband is a big topic of discussion. The FCC recently took steps to improve rural broadband and has allocated almost $1.5 billion to improve rural broadband over 700,000 locations across 45 different states. So we're trying to make sure that Western PA gets its fair share of that funding as well, and to make sure that we're ready to help build the infrastructure for our customers when they're ready to deploy. But I would remind you again, I go back to the initial data point, which was we've got 500 towers across the counties of Southwest PA, and over 200 small cells already deployed across Southwest PA. And many of that is outside of Allegheny County, it's across Washington County, and really doing our best to try to support the rural community.
Okay. Jonathan, there's a lot been talk about 5G and 5G networks, and that's something that we've been supportive of here at the Chamber, expanding that. Can you talk a little bit about how you feel this will be completed, and what's the overall impact of a 5G network?
Sure, and I think what I would first of all say is there's a lot of misconceptions about 5G, and what really 5G will mean to us, because it's really hard to tell what 5G will bring. And I kind of take people back to when the iPhone first launched in 2007, when we had a 3G network. But the iPhone kind of revolutionized the way that we used our devices, but users still had kind of connection issues at the time. So 5G will certainly open up a whole new realm of possibilities for us as users. And it's a massive game changer for us, and primarily due to the speed and responsiveness of this technology. 4G will be really important. It will remain important. We're using 4G and LTE to stay connected today. But 5G is kind of like going from, I guess, traveling down Route 19 to traveling on I-79. It's kind of like building a much faster, broader, more lanes of traffic, and giving us the opportunity to work, to operate at much faster speeds. So again, staying connected. I remain on the point about, it's important for us in every zip code, whatever age we are, every demographic, any industry and any household, 5G is going to have an impact. And it'll really facilitate applications that will be important in healthcare, more than just simply like telemedicine. It'll actually enrich education. It'll make a huge difference in public safety, manufacturing and agriculture. And also there's an added benefit of job creation and workforce development. So CTIA, which is one of our industry associations, the cellular telephone industry, estimates that 5G in Pittsburgh area alone would create over 2,800 jobs. Wow. And increase GDP in the area by over $458 million. So that's going to make a significant impact to us and create an awful lot of opportunities for us as well. And then the last couple of things on 5G, I would say, is there was independent research conducted by Franklin and Marshall College recently in a statewide survey. That was, I think, October 2019, they published their findings, showing that 71% of Pennsylvanians were in favor of expanding 5G infrastructure, and then that 61% of Pennsylvanians were also in favor of establishing a uniform set of state standards to allow for faster construction of 5G. Because 5G won't happen alone just on upgrading antennas on towers. It's really going to be reliant upon building out more small cells. These are the cells, the small radios that will go onto utility poles along the public right-of-way, kind of like we do at the moment. I look outside of my house and I see, the utility poles and fiber cable and electric power being run to my house, and we'll have small cells, periodically on those utility poles, and that will provide the additional capacity needed for 5G. So at the moment, we've got over 2,500 municipalities across Pennsylvania, and we've probably got about 2,500 different ordinances covering small cells. So one of the things that we really we need in order to help us deploy 5G and get ready for 5G is a streamlined set of rules and regulations that both protects the municipalities, but also provides consistency for the industry and predictability for us when we're making decisions about where to deploy.
So it really sounds like to implement 5G and to keep up really with customer demand, deploying these small cells is something that's going to be necessary.
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of the growth in terms of building out capacity that we've talked about. We've got coverage and you've got capacity. So coverage is, hey, can I make a phone call? Am I seeing sort of 3 or 4 bars on my, or 5 bars of coverage on my cell phone? But we've all experienced those times when we see it looks like we should be able to make a phone call, or we should be able to download a video on our device. But unfortunately, we can't. And we're going, well, why is that? Well, that's kind of congestion on the network, and that's where you need to build capacity.
Okay. Concerning Crown Castle itself and the current COVID-19 emergency that we're all experiencing and dealing with, what's the impact been on the company? And what do you see in terms of moving forward, not only in the company, but also, connectivity moving forward in our region and in the country?
Sure. Well, I mean, I would say we're blessed. Crown Castle's blessed to have some great leadership, and not only are we focused on our customers, but we're focused, as I said before, on our communities and our employees. And Jay Brown, our CEO, does a video call from his truck and posts that on our Connect page, our intranet page, at least once a week, and kind of stays connected with us all. So it's been really important to stay focused on not only providing service for our customers, but also making sure that our employees stay healthy and safe as we carry out the critical needs of maintaining and continuing to build the infrastructure. So it's been challenging times, definitely, for some jurisdictions, as I talked about earlier on. They're trying to remain open to process permits and continue to allow us to build out small cells and change equipment on towers as we need to do. And we've been sympathetic and working in partnership with those municipalities, and we'll continue to do that. So I would say COVID-19 has been challenging, but compared to some other companies and in other different industries, we've done comparatively very well. We've been able to keep up the good work the Crown's doing, and fortunately our employees, of which we've got about 5,000 across the country, and almost a quarter of those in Southwest Pennsylvania, we've by and large stayed very, very healthy and been able to continue to work. A lot of us, based out of South Point, have been able to work remotely. We've all got laptops and use cellular connectivity to continue to be effective in what we do. So the business really hasn't missed a beat. And as I said, COVID-19, with COVID-19, we've seen that increase in demand for connectivity. We've seen that increase in demand in internet traffic. So it's continued to drive our need to provide the services that we do, and especially for those essential workers and support staff that rely on connectivity so badly.
Now, you mentioned working from home, and evidently, and obviously, you're working from home as well, unless that map that's behind you is from your suite in the Bellagio in Vegas or something along that line. But how are you taking care of yourself during this time? And I'm sure Crown Castle encourages its employees to keep active and keep safe. But how are you doing that personally right now?
Yeah, it does. I appreciate you asking that, Jeff. And again, Crown's got a great office sort of campus environment up by the Hilton Garden Inn in South Point, and I certainly miss not being able to go to the gym. And I've probably put on a few pounds, since COVID-19. I would tell you that probably my eldest son has been far more innovative and creative in his workout regime than I have. But it's been important to try to stay focused, and I think with being as busy as we have been at work, that's certainly helped keep the days have kind of flown by as opposed to dragging by. And again, I think I go back to kind of the connectivity story and say, hey, if this had happened 30 years ago, or even 15 years ago for that matter, before all the applications that we have, I know some people will say, yeah, hey, I really don't want my kids kind of doing watching TikTok all day long. Right. But there's a lot of applications and how connectivity is a power for good, especially at a time like this. So.
Good. Well, I'm glad you're healthy and keep it that way. You mind if we take a few questions from our participants, Jonathan? Sure.
I'd love to take a few. But before we do that, Jeff, one thing that I've failed to kind of say is, I talked about the community, but we've really we take our commitment back to the community very seriously, and I'm really proud to say that we've actually provided about 1,000 laptops locally in Southwest PA to students, as well as hotspots to keep them connected during the difficult times of working and trying to learn remotely. And the other good thing is we've turned our cafe, which opened about 4 years ago at our office in South Point, into providing meals for local community members. And we've been focused on Washington County and Butler counties providing those meals as well. So that's been something I've been really proud of. So thanks for giving me that chance to.
Yeah, Jonathan, if you don't mind us expanding on that for a minute, I think that's actually rather unique. I know that you do have a cafe up at your corporate headquarters, and you've been, I believe, preparing and donating meals to some of the hospitals and other the frontline workers. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, I'd love to. Yeah. So to date, we've been able to donate over 5,100 meals to people, in Washington and Butler counties, as I've mentioned. But we've been partnered with local organizations, including the Washington County Meals on Wheels, Washington County Food Bank, 412 Food Rescue, Washington Health System, and the Mon Valley Hospital as well. So we've been preparing meals on a weekly basis. We've been ramping up this now, and it's a great thing that we're putting some of our resources to good use, even though none of our employees are going into that office anymore. We've decided to kind of donate these meals, and I feel really proud to work for Crown and that we're doing something good at this difficult time.
That's great. I mean, between the laptop donation and the meals, I mean, that's a great corporate commitment to our community. And we really appreciate that, Jonathan. Please extend our thanks to your team.
I will do. Thank you, Jeff.
Well, here's a first question we have. Has infrastructure development experienced any delays with such things as municipal meetings being canceled due to the COVID and/or permit delays at a state level?
Yeah, I mean, most of the permits that we get are at local municipal level, and certain municipalities and jurisdictions have been able to work seamlessly by going remotely, and we've seen kind of no real slowdown in the permitting process. Other permitting offices have been far more challenged, and we'll just continue to partner. And like I said before, we've got to be sympathetic to the needs of the city. We are providing critical infrastructure, so we believe that the permits that we are requesting are very critical to keep and maintain public safety. But we're also cognizant of the fact that cities are focused on other things too at this point in time. So we're trying to just make sure that the lines of communication are open and our partnership stays strong.
Another question we have is, along with the large cell phone companies, Verizon and such, are there any other companies that we may not know of and that you could speak of that use your towers?
Sure. I mean, we've actually got many customers, that use our towers from, whether it be, a small local business that might need kind of a two-way radio solution and need to put an antenna on our tower. We're excited about, opportunities with companies like Dish. We've got many customers beyond the towers that use our fiber optic network as well. So we do a lot of business directly with local government, with state government, federal government, with healthcare systems, with education, K through 12. And we're a big provider of fiber services that basically provide broadband to schools. So really proud of that side of our business as well.
That's a great segue to another question we have. We got a question from someone in the McGuffey School District that mentioned that during the pandemic, there's been a real challenge for the district. Has been an issue of connectivity and having internet access. The district has been pretty innovative in its steps to provide access, setting up, hotspots and parking lots and implementing mobile units across the district. Do you have any other suggestions for districts like McGuffey that tend to be more rural areas on how they can increase their connectivity for their students and for their educators?
I think mobile hotspots is certainly we've worked with other schools in Pennsylvania. I know of certainly an example where we've helped facilitate a hotspot that students could drive into a parking lot and be able to use that Wi-Fi themselves too. But as the critical infrastructure provider, we're trying to make sure that companies like wireless internet service providers as well can get on our towers and provide coverage in areas where maybe there's limited cellular coverage. So yeah, we're working with a host of different companies to make sure that we're providing better coverage to rural communities.
Thank you. And looking ahead to potential infrastructure legislation at the federal level, what would you expect communication infrastructure? Would you expect that to be part of that? And what would that mean also for Crown Castle?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I would say certainly, we've just recently heard about the HEROES Act that just passed the House this week, and that's going to be discussed in the Senate and probably going to be changed significantly. That could have a very positive impact on telemedicine, which obviously will require more of our infrastructure. We see a lot of good work being done by the FCC, with both Chairman Pai and then Commissioner Carr, very strong advocates for 5G and the rolling out of 5G. I mean, there are other countries in the world like China and South Korea that are already getting ahead of deploying 5G. We want to make sure that we're providing 5G again, both in urban and rural areas. But with our team in Canonsburg, I'm really personally focused on working at the state and local level to provide solutions that will ease the path for deployment of small cells across Pennsylvania. We have House Bill 1400 that's being discussed in Harrisburg at the moment. So we're working with local representatives, and we'd encourage your members to reach out to them as well in support of House Bill 1400.
We have time for one final question, and this is actually an interesting one. How do you see your future growth in space? Having maybe NASA, Amazon, SpaceX, or even local companies being active in that arena. That's a great question. Yeah,
that's a great question. I think I mean, we're primarily a terrestrial-based. In order to probably build out the kind of capacity that 5G needs, you've got, like I said, you need to get kind of local with building out capacity, and that's where small cells are so important. So although looking at kind of space technology and providing infrastructure solutions through satellites, there's been satellite phones available, gosh, as long as I've been in the industry, which is 27 years now. So at the time I was like, well, why doesn't this technology take off? But it just simply, in order to give and deliver the kind of experience that we need, you need that terrestrial based infrastructure, and you need to get local in terms of the network provision. You need to get local to your customers as well. So I think our focus is certainly on building for today and building for the future, and that's definitely here and in Southwest Pennsylvania, and not necessarily in space.
Well, Jonathan Hart, we certainly appreciate your time this morning, and also we appreciate Crown Castle's dedication to not only increasing connectivity in our country, but also, of course, your great commitment to Washington County. Thank you very much for being with us this morning. We appreciate your community dedication as well.
Thank you, Jeff. I really appreciate it. And I just wanted to say to everybody, stay healthy and stay safe during this Memorial Day weekend. Thank you.
Thank you, Jonathan. Jonathan Hart, he is the Director of Government Affairs for Crown Castle. Thank you again. I'd also like to thank again our sponsors for this morning: Community Bank, Mon Valley Hospital, Range Resources, Washington Health Systems, and Shell Directories. I would like to mention that Shell Directories will again be hosting their annual Appalachian Shell Hub Conference on August 27th at the Hilton Garden Inn. We look forward to that great conference. So the Chamber has been a sponsor of that for several years. And also on June 11th will be our next morning briefing, when we will be featuring the results of a survey that the Washington County Tourism Promotion Agency did to discuss the reopening of our tourism assets in southwestern Pennsylvania. So we appreciate your time this morning. We appreciate you being with us for a morning briefing, and have a wonderful Memorial Day weekend. Thank you.